Welcome. Happy Valentine's Day and welcome to the Friday Forum for February 14th, 2025. This is the 226th Friday Forum in a series hosted by ICLR, the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, Canada's leading source for disaster resilience knowledge. Each month, we present recently completed research related to ICLR's mission to make Canada more resilient to natural disasters. I'm your host, Dr. Keith Porter, ICLR's Chief Engineer. I'm speaking to you from London, Ontario, traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenapeewuk, and Chinookan nations. Today is the second in a series of 3 Friday Forum webinars about fire. Last month's talk was about fire hazard, how frequent and how severe are the fires. Dr. Mike Flanagan of Thompson Rivers University told us how climate change is affecting fire activity, our options to coexist with fire, and some implications of the recent Los Angeles fires. If you missed it, check out the video at www.iclr.org/workshops. Next month's talk on March 14th will be about firefighting water supply. Our friend Dr. Charles Scawthorne will tell us about portable and high-pressure dedicated systems that have been in operation in West Coast cities for decades. Had they been available in Los Angeles last month, outcomes might have been very different. Today's talk, the second in that series of 3, is about building better to resist fire. Our speakers come from ICLR's sister organization in the United States, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS. They're going to tell us about IBHS's new Wildfire Prepared Home certification program. I am very excited about this talk, so forgive me for going on a little bit about it more than usual. IBHS has been championing a set of practical, clear standards that U.S. builders have been using to build resilient homes and businesses. IBHS standards like their Fortified Home and Fortified Commercial programs are supported by decades of research by scholars and practitioners throughout North America. A study that I helped to lead for FEMA demonstrated that complying with Fortified makes buildings less expensive to build and own over their life cycle. And a study by University of Alabama scholars showed that Fortified can raise home resale value far in excess of its added cost. But builders can't build based on journal articles and reports. They need precise guidance about building materials and procedures. Use this material, not that, such and such fasteners at certain maximum spacing, that sort of thing. That's what Fortified provides, much like the recent Canadian wind standard, CSA S520. So I'm hopeful that IBHS's new standard for wildfire will be equally impactful. A little bit about our speakers. Mark Vaughn's career spans insurance and general contracting. He's been with IBHS for the last 2 years and currently leads operations for IBHS's Wildfire Prepared Home program. Amanda West has worked in broadcast design and product development. She's been with IBHS for the last 5 years and serves as IBHS's Director of Product Services. Now, before we begin, here's our agenda. Our webinar is going to last 90 minutes. Our speakers will present for about half that time, then I'll moderate questions for the rest of the time. Please feel free to chat your questions into the Q&A box. I'll try to pose your questions in the order they appear in the Q&A box after our speakers have finished presenting. If we have a lot of questions, I may only pose your first question, then move on to others, then circle back to your additional questions. Our webinar is recorded. ICLR is going to post the slides and a link to the video on Monday or so. So if you have colleagues who couldn't attend, let them know. You'll find the video and a PDF of our speaker's deck at www.iclr.org/workshops. And now over to you, Amanda and Mark.
All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. All right. So about IBHS. So we know that severe weather disrupts lives and causes financial loss. IBHS delivers cutting-edge research to prevent avoidable suffering, strengthen buildings, inform insurers, and support resilient communities. As an independent nonprofit, IBHS studies wildfire, wind, rain, and hail to develop real-world solutions that help homeowners and businesses build stronger, safer communities. Today, we're going to talk about the latest wildfire science and our program developed based on our research. Some of this video shows some of the cool research that we do at our lab, and we're going to go through how we do research both in the field and at our research center. So next, this shows you a little bit of the video, what we see. We go out into the field for post events, see what happens in the real world, and then take that back to our research center in Richburg, South Carolina. And then we analyze each one of the components to see exactly, what happens here, why did this happen in the field, and can we replicate it in real life? And eventually this comes out into effective solutions for homeowners and business owners. So next, the first thing that we want to know is how exactly do homes ignite in a wildfire event? So there's 3 ignition mechanisms. 1, from embers. Number 2, direct flame contact. And number 3, radiant heat. Embers are the leading cause of home ignitions, not the big wall of flames that a lot of people think. It's actually embers. So wildfires typically enter communities through windborne embers that can travel miles ahead of that wildfire front. Those embers ignite spot fires around and on structures, and these fires generate more embers, leading to flames, radiant heat, and spreading the fire further. Structural embers are typically larger. So once that home catches on fire, those embers are larger, and then they're larger than vegetative embers. So, and then of course, you add the wind component, and then that worsens conditions, fanning the flames and carrying the embers deeper into the neighborhoods. For example, the Paradise, California fires, there were over 200 spot fires in the community as people were still evacuating. So here, this was in 2023, and you can see on the left-hand side the tall flames that you see from the forest. So those are the flames, and then when that wind bends down, you can see the spot fires over on the right as people are trying to evacuate. And then you can see those are shorter flames because that's on shorter vegetation. But the wind brings those embers into the community, in which can start those spot fires. If a home is ignited by wildfire, there is more than 90% chance it will result in a total loss. In an active wildfire, firefighters cannot defend every home. Preparation is critical. During a fast-moving wildfire, first responders prioritize evacuations and saving lives, not the individual homes. Resources are limited. So homeowners must take those proactive steps before the fire starts. And effective wildfire mitigation strategy requires a collection or a system of actions that work together to help protect the structures. And we're going to take you through those in just a second. So we want to start with ember defense, since we know that that's the leading cause of home ignitions. So we created Wildfire Prepared Home based on our decades of science, research, working with people in the communities, post-disaster events, and then obviously our lab research. So Wildfire Prepared Home is a designation program that reduces wildfire risk to homes through a collection of mitigation actions at the parcel level. So, your property. It's based on the latest science and research from IBHS. And if there's anything that you get out of this presentation, let it be this. It's not about doing 1 or 2 actions to reduce your risk for wildfire and just hoping for the best. You have to do an entire collection or a system of actions because embers will find that one weak link. So this is our program. Our Wildfire Prepared Home program takes a systems-based 2-tiered approach. And again, it's at the parcel level, and we provide homeowners with the clear, actionable steps to protect their homes. So they know exactly what they need to do. So we have two levels. We have base and plus. The base level reduces ember risk by addressing vulnerable building features and the defensible space around the home. And then that breaks the path of connective fuels. Excuse me. The plus level enhances protection beyond the base level. So you have to do everything in the base level. Excuse me. And then on top of that, do the plus things. So that's specific building materials, using specific building materials that defend against radiant heat and direct flame contact. So let's go through the base level. So of course, you always want to start with the roof. The roof is the first line of defense. If you have a wood shake roof, you might as well not do any of the rest of the things. You have got to start with a Class A roof. Fortunately, a lot of people already have a Class A roof. So that would be fiberglass composition, asphalt shingles, concrete or clay tiles, metal shingles, slate, those types of materials. And then the next thing is metal gutters. A lot of people in California don't even have gutters at all because it doesn't rain much in Southern California. And that is where we launched this program. Metal gutters, and then there's maintenance. Of course, you want to keep all that vegetation off of your roof and out of your gutters. Next, you want to have 6 inches of non-combustible exterior siding at the bottoms, at the base of your walls. If you already have non-combustible sidings, you're fine. So the types of non-combustible materials are fiber cement, brick, stone, stucco, or as you can see here, exposed concrete foundation. The types of things that are non-compliant would be vinyl, wood, engineered wood, that type of thing. Next, this is another big one for the base level. We know that vents are very vulnerable and can ignite your home from the inside out in an ember storm. So we've done testing on different size mesh, and typically most homes come with 1/2-inch mesh. So in modern building code, and through our testing in a wildfire prone area, we ask that you either install the ember resistant vents that you can purchase at the store, or you can order off of Amazon a whole roll of this 1/8-inch or about 3mm size metal mesh, and you can put that over your vents. If it's in the attic, you can do it from the inside. Another way to test what size vents you already have on the house, you can use a golf tee or a pin or a nail. And if it doesn't go through the mesh, you've got the right size. If it goes all the way through, that mesh size is too big. All right, so I don't know if anybody's heard of this yet, but this is been all the talk lately. The 0 to 5 foot non-combustible zone. In California, they call it zone 0 or ember resistant zone. It's got a few different names, but this was no accident. So, we wanted to see, exactly how do these embers affect a house in the built environment. IBHS has a whole wall of fans, and we can blow hurricane force winds and things like that. So behind these ember generators that you see in this picture, we are blowing wind. So we've done all types of under like controlled ember attacks at our testing facility. We've observed embers hitting the homes, falling to the ground, and then they bounce out to about 5 feet away. So this research confirms the critical importance of maintaining this zone completely non-combustible, and we'll take you through that. So here, the 0 to 5 foot non-combustible zone, you've got to remove all of the vegetation, and that means everything. Trees, we do not allow any trees or overhanging branches in the 0 to 5 foot zone. Removing wood mulch, those are like tiny little matchsticks. And then, of course, combustible fence. This is a demonstration of mulch catching fire then a bush, then the fence. And then the fence, the wood fence acts as if it's like a wick, like a candle, and brings it all the way to the home on the left there, igniting the home, breaking out the window, and then that's a total loss. As you see on the right, there's rocks down on the ground out to 5 feet, and 5 feet, a 5-foot metal fence. That's just replacing 5 feet. That's all we're asking. So if you have a wood fence and you need a retrofit, just that 5 feet. Anywhere along the house, especially if it's attached to the home. And this is the most critical area. All right, next. So for the base level, decks, we also know decks are vulnerable because that is typically they're made from wood, which we know is combustible, and it's attached right to the house. So you've got to clear the area underneath no storage of any kind of anything underneath there, creating that 5-foot zone under and around the deck. And then any decks that are about 4 feet or less, you're going to want to enclose it with that 1/8-inch metal mesh. That will keep out the embers. It'll keep debris. We know, in a wind event, which, carries the wildfire, it's going to put that vegetation under there, and then embers are going to get there and ignite it. Next, the 5 to 30-foot defensible space. So this is going just outside your 5 foot, all the way to your property line, or out to 30 feet, whichever one comes first. And so I've got a few pictures here from a few past fires where it shows you a fence caught on fire, which then caught the tree on fire, which then caught this house next door. And this was a total loss of a home. A firefighter was actually there and got that photo before it was fully engulfed. The picture on the right shows where tree mulch caught on fire, wicked the fire right to the house. That was a hot tub that was right up against that house. So that's why it's important to break that. You're basically creating fuel breaks to break that, the connective fuels that would bring a fire right to the house. So you want to maintain your yard, space out the vegetation. If you have structures like a shed or a hot tub, keeping those spaced apart. And then, keeping everything at least 10 feet away from the house, big things, and creating that 0 to 5 foot non-combustible zone around them. Next, this is our next level. So this is where it's important and where building materials are important. So the siding, you want to install non-combustible siding, and I mentioned those before, stucco, kind of a concrete type siding. And that is so radiant heat and flames can't ignite that siding. Eaves is another one, as you will see in this video on below. Open eaves, a lot of homes in California are built with open eaves. So you want to enclose those with non-combustible material. So there's a concrete fiber board that I've seen a lot of people use to enclose these. So that works really well. And then windows. We've noticed with windows in some of our testing like this, that one of the panes will fall out. So because of the glazing around the window. So that's why we're asking for at least 2 panes to be tempered. And then that way, if one falls out, you still have a tempered layer in there. I believe the WUI compliance is one of them being tempered, but we require 2 being tempered. So we go a little bit above code on that. All right. And then next, defensible space. So you're gonna want a fire resistant deck. So you can see here, this is another angle from the deck fire that we did. There's embers, and if you look at the deck that's towards the left side of the video here, you can see that there's spot fires all around this, but it's got a 5-foot non-combustible zone. This deck is made with a no-gap walking surface, and it's completely non-combustible. So it is not made of wood. Using metal joist underneath is helpful too. And then this was also enclosed underneath with the metal mesh. And then for our plus level, just to have a little bit more defensible space, we require any sheds or anything like that to be 30 feet from the home. So we want as much space, give that home as much space as possible without having large structures right next to them. So we're continuing our structure to structure, wind-driven building to building fire spread testing. So as you can see here in the bottom image, we've got a house and a shed. We're now burning ADUs full of furniture, cabinets, everything like that. And we've been working on this research for 3 years to try to figure out exactly how close homes can be together. So we're going to have more research on that coming out really soon. And so while our research always continues, the modeling, recent field observations in Lahaina and Los Angeles areas, and experimental testing in the lab all point towards the same system of mitigation actions. So you can have confidence that these pieces matter. We're now looking at a neighborhood scale and to solve for conflagration. So we're looking at building density, connective fuels, fuel loads. And now I'll hand it over to Mark. Mark will provide some insight on our latest post-event deployment. And Mark.
Very good. Thanks, Amanda. Thank you, everybody. So we're going to talk through the LA fires a little bit and just kind of give some examples of things we saw there and how they reinforce the mission. I want to pause here for a second and highlight Dr. Murray Morrison. There in the middle on the top, he is Canadian, so I want to point that out that we have a Canadian on our team. We have that research. But we have a great team here. We've got fire scientists here from these guys are from all over the world. We've got Faraz there on the right. He is our top fire scientist, and we've got
there's Mark.
Yeah, no, that's me. And we got Malad and Evan, and he spent time in New Zealand. Several of these guys are from Iran and Lebanon, and then we got Chief Hawks there. So great team of scientists doing this post-deployment. So Chief Hawks, he worked for CAL FIRE, the California Fire Service. And so he's retired from them and now works for us. And he was able to facilitate our basically embedding with the California's Fire Service. They're called DENS teams. They're damage inspection teams. So we were able to get into these areas, even though they're closed to the public, and with escorts from the CAL FIRE team, and do some research on structures that survived and how the fire progressed. These are the two fires. They're separate fires. We got Altadena on the right-hand side and the Palisades on the left, or Eaton fire in Altadena. This photo shows the dots. So those are all wildfire prepared houses that are designated already. And so we wanted to be able to look at those. Go ahead, Amanda. They're all contained at this point. The Palisades fire, the DENS teams are ongoing on their research to check all of the structures. They completed that on the Eaton fire. So from conflagration to resilience, if we look at this area here, we see some vegetation on the top right up here. Looks like there were structures. You can see the shadows of what are trees, likely singed, burnt. So in the middle, we have some cars, parking lot, something like that. And let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So this is that top right corner that we just looked at. We can see now there were a lot of structures here. We've got this area was built in the 50s and 60s, and it's just continued to develop. So we know we want more space on our little plot of land. So we add an addition, we add a shed, a garage, and we end up with, in the top right, less than 5 feet separation between structures there. We've got this whole row of some type of housing at 7 feet separation roughly between them. Complete connective fuels, over half of them. There's no defensible space here. All of this tree debris falls on top and around all of these structures, and as it dies, lands on the ground, adding fuel. We've got connective fuels. These two houses, I mean, they're on the property line and have hedging in between the small space. And we saw a lot of that. In this area, there were a lot of houses that, small lots. They had chain link fences that were largely covered with vegetation, creating hedges, privacies in their backyards. Go ahead, Amanda. Here are the cars, the parking lot we saw. Turns out there was a boat and an RV there as well. The interesting part about this one is that this house actually had, of all of the ones that we saw on that picture, the best chance of being mitigated for wildfire prepared. The closest neighbor is 35 feet away. All of their other structures are on their own lot. And from what Amanda was saying earlier, we know that 30-foot mark is important. If we can have a 30-foot separation of defensible space applied, it is unlikely that the structure will ignite. We need that 30 feet to be defended. And to remove those fuels, reduce that fuel load within 30 feet. So this house had a great chance of being mitigated and defended and perhaps survive this wildfire. This is the complete view of that area, and all these houses were lost. All right. This house is not a wildfire prepared home, but it was largely remodeled. Many of these houses are not necessarily new builds. Some of them were, but many of them were full remodels. So this one you can see in the satellite photo there looked like it had a full renovation recently. We've got a lot of xeriscaping, little water use. So it's not exactly a non-combustible zone. We still do have plants around it. But for the most part, we've got a very good defensible space. This area, they put the rock down. That's fantastic. And they went much farther than 5 feet. Now we're starting to see a couple of issues here. So they switched from rock to mulch on this side of the house. Perhaps it was, who knows why, but this side we had mulch. We can see it sprayed across the patio there against the house. All those plants are singed. On the bottom right of this photo, we can see that the wall itself, stucco turns colors when it gets heat. It actually turns a little bit of a pinkish color. So this house took heat with that mulch burning there at the bottom of the wall, singed all these plants. And we could just continue to go around. Largely, not much damage. I mean, it survived very well. On the left here, we can see that it did have these trees appeared to take some heat. They're dead now. On this photo, we can see this is a wood fence. That gate there is made of wood. It's open. The fire service, when they, as they're defending, they actually will go and open and prop open if they can, or basically they'll knock down gates or fences that are attached to houses as much as possible. So this one was propped open at some point. Notice the splatter on the wall. We'll come back to that. So this area, very, very interesting right here. This is the most damage this house suffered. And if we look on the top of that hill, there was some type of vegetation up there that burnt. Right here at the bottom, there's not a lot here, but we can tell what was. If we look on the ground, you're going to see, Amanda's going to point out there, these little bars. So there's a bar there, and there's a bar over on the other side. We saw a lot of these. What that is, this was a recycling bin. You can see a can, maybe a glass bottle or something there, and then the other side was likely trash. So these bins, these municipality bins that are picked up by the truck, they're all standardized at this point. They're made of plastics, and them themselves. Well, go ahead, Amanda. Well, I think there's another photo of that. The plastic themselves may or may not ignite, but the contents of those, especially think of recycling, you're putting cardboards and papers inside of those cans. Those things are definitely combustible. So this is only looking just to the left of that previous photo. This area took a lot of heat when those things burnt. So we, removed the paint, Even the gas meter at the bottom corner there, like it melted the gas meter a little bit. So house survived, but took damage. And we can just learn from these parts. We need to move those bins away from the house in a red flag event. This is another structure, just connected fuel story here. This neighborhood was, go ahead, man, you can jump. So this neighborhood was largely built with stucco and steel studs. It was a very well-built housing. If you see the house on the left, it was a complete loss. The walls generally will stay standing because they were steel construction, but they were burnt out. This here, we had a wood gate, and otherwise great. We've got stucco, we've got steel studded construction, we've got a masonry fence in between them, but that masonry fence was covered in vines, and we put a wood fence, a wood gate, connecting that masonry fence to the house, and that gate burnt. On the other side of this house, we have a very lucky situation, connected fuel between these two structures. Thankfully, this didn't ignite. If this house had ignited, that connected fuel would have carried it to the next house, and conflagration would continue. Conflagration factor, structure density, the connected fuels, the building materials, all these things matter. And our goal is to learn more on how these pieces fit together and where we can impact that, where we can pick up one of those dominoes in that domino line. If we look at the bottom here, you'll see this is another area of, I think this is actually the same house. So this is that mulch that burnt, and it singed the stucco there. This at the top right, the garage door. I want you all to take a look at this because this is important. You're in Canada. When you start getting snow, where the winds blow and that snow accumulates, it's the same places that embers and debris will accumulate in a wildfire event. Wildfires are wind events. Yes, there's flames. Wildfires are wind events. You don't have wildfires that spread rapidly without winds. So where that debris around your house or your client's houses, where that debris accumulates, where that snow accumulates, that's where the debris and embers are also going to accumulate. And this inside corners like this are great spots for that to happen. This is a wood garage door. And so there was some type of accumulation, either debris or just embers with the wood, because it doesn't have a 6-inch non-combustible at the bottom there. And it started to burn that garage door. Obviously defended, this house would have been a complete loss. Lattice work, decks, this was a very lucky situation. I don't know if it looks like it must have been defended because the stuff is kindling. But yeah, on the right here, you can actually see where the debris was actually pulled away. This house is stucco. We've got a non-combustible garage door, and we still took damage when that debris accumulated and started to burn. Windows, Amanda mentioned them earlier. So if you're familiar with annealed versus tempered glass, most windows are typically annealed glass. That's the standard. Building code requires tempered glass in certain areas like doors or within certain distance of doors, depending on the code. So these are examples of annealed glass. They tend to shatter, and they don't take a lot of heat. If they take heat, the top right there, you'll see the pieces on the ground there. They take a flash over, they'll shatter and break. The tempered glass is actually tempered with heat, and it holds up to that heat. So it can take that and survive it without shattering. When it does shatter, it makes those little bitty square pieces. The building materials and the gates, we have on the left here, we have, again, stucco siding. This was a gate attached to the house. Now this was defended. These pieces wouldn't be standing if it hadn't been defended. But you can see even the nails still sticking out of the top there. Typically they'll come in and they'll knock down the gate and throw it in the front yard and get it away from the structure. On the right-hand side here, this is wood siding. Inside of that cavity in the doorway, which we do see a lot. Depending on how it's installed, there's a little bit of a pocket inside the framing between the structure and the actual door frame. It usually has some insulation, but it's just a pathway for flames to grow. let's come back to the trash cans for a moment. So on the left-hand side here, you see the embers on top of a trash can that didn't burn through. We did see several examples of heat and that melted the trash cans down and opened up on the sides, and the contents were exposed. So once you get these plastics, they may be flame resistant, but once they melt, it actually kind of changes the way they behave. They're turning into liquids for one, and that liquid does become much more flammable. The contents themselves are really a big part of it. So the contents will burn of a recycling bin. We need to move those things away from the houses. And if you're picking up on this, a lot of these things we can, wildfire prepared is a passive system. We can do all these things, but we live in these houses. We have to change people's behavior and the way they approach a wildfire event. Red flag events, we know they're happening. It's a meteorological event. Generally, we can this LA fires. We knew the winds were coming. We knew the environment was very dry. We were in a drought. The humidity was in single digits. All these things were known. We actually internally we had a Slack channel going, watching this event before it actually occurred, and all of these fire services do the same. We have to get homeowners to take that information and apply it to their house and take action. These photos, we got Chief Hawks here on the left looking at a window. So this is a hot tub sitting roughly 4.5 feet from the outside of that door, and all tempered glass, double tempered panes on the window, double temper on the doors. The top pane, these are vinyl windows and doors. So the top pane of that window up there is on the ground. You can see Steve over here looking at it, and it didn't break. It fell out in one unit, the entire sash. And what happens there, these things are installed in order to be able to replace the glass. They replace it from the outside. So there's adhesive. They basically glue the glass into the frame. And we're finding that adhesive loses adhesion at some point. There's little plastic films that go around to kind of cover that gap. That stuff is the first thing that comes out. And then we may get one pane of glass falling. We may get the entire unit falling out once that frame starts to let go. The door, the same thing. So on the right-hand panes of that door, that's 2 units of glass. They didn't break. They just literally just fell out. We assume the same thing happened on the left. It took more heat. You can see the damage on the shutters inside. There was no damage beyond that. It stopped right there, and that glass fell out, and one of the panes broke. We can see it on the ground there, and shattered into a tempered glass, small units. The other piece looked like it appeared it laid over the hot tub and basically re-annealed, and we have bent glass, which tempered glass doesn't do. So that was really interesting. We had FSRI was the one that came and looked at this structure, which is another research organization that we work with. So they actually showed up to look at this specific event and documented it as well. They're doing a lot of research on windows for us.
Can you talk about the what is this on the wall?
Oh, the splatter. Yes, I meant to come back to that. So we saw this a lot. Again, wildfires are wind events. So we had 50, 60, 70 mile an hour winds across this area. That splatter is plastics. So we saw it with the hot tub covers, with a lot of the furniture that's plastic, or even aluminum furniture that has the poly cushions and things. That stuff all melts down, and we'll see just a splatter of black splottage across. And if you start peeling it back, it's plastics. The trash cans, the same thing on that house we looked at earlier. The wall had a bunch of splatter. That's from the trash cans, and that melted plastic just flying in the wind and depositing on structures.
And I want to chime in here because one of the things I didn't speak about, a lot of people will replace their wood fence with a vinyl fence because it was sold as a fire resistant material. Yes, it's more fire resistant than wood, but as you see in these photos, they still melt and they still spread fire. So that's another teaching moment. So that 5 foot next to the home still needs to be some type of non-combustible fence or something like that.
And this example right here for hot tubs, we're actually addressing hot tubs more closely in our forthcoming update of the standard. But this hot tub is sitting on a non-combustible patio, and which is ideal. We don't want it on a wood structure if we can avoid it. The close to the house is the issue. If we had moved this hot tub 10 feet away, we had a 10-foot separation. It's unlikely that we would have nearly as much damage to that house. We don't think this house was defended. There's not evidence other outside of this. There wasn't water. Typically CAL FIRE will go through and remove plants that are next to the house that they're defending. If they're doing things to the house to keep it from getting more damage, and they'll barricade doors and things that are open. So none of that happened on this house. We don't think this actually was defended at all. The house survived as is, which was amazing. So this is a great example. We spent probably an hour here documenting this thing. It was great. Go ahead, Amanda. The 5-foot non-combustible zone. So this, just to give you a layout, the photo on the left, this is a courtyard. The street is to your left here. And that, we look straight ahead, that's the garage, and it's pointing out to the street. The garage doors are out to the street. So if we go across the center photo, we're going across this courtyard, and we're looking, you can see the water hose, see the little tree there. And all this was mulch, and it's mulch all burnt. And you can see a little bit of singeing at the bottom of that wall, and you can see a little bit of smoke damage up at the top where that beam goes in. On the right, this is through a door or window on the other side where firefighters made entry. The inside of this garage burnt from that ember and that the heat that came up. It managed to go in between the stucco and get into the framing of this structure. And if you look at that hanging thing out right there, that's a recessed light. So the amount of heat that it took to melt that plastic light, make it fall out of the ceiling and droop like that, this house is very lucky to survive. So it took intervention to keep it from damage. We're going to kind of go through these fairly quickly. This is connected fuel story. So on the left, we've got a bunch of plants. You can see some of the shrubbery that's still there. It caught the eaves on fire. Again, it took intervention to keep this house from going away. Right under a window is a dangerous place as well. That window, at least one pane survived. In the middle there, you can see the middle photo, there's a plant on the left. Likely that same type of plant was underneath here. That stucco, again, it changes colors. So that took a lot of heat to get that white. It burnt all the paint off and turned that thing white. So that bay window is actually, I'll point the bay window out. This is a great way to build a bay window. It's not just a horizontal ledge. We have an angled window, and it has a non-combustible underneath. It's a great way to build a bay window. Right-hand side, this was a connected fuel story. That was a wood fence that connected over, and we have a wall here with a bunch of vegetation on it that was protected. Amanda mentioned decks, and we've done testing on decks at the research center. I'll speak of the one on the left specifically. I actually took this photo. This was a detached deck from a house. The house is over to the right of this photo. This deck was very heavy built. All of the joists were 4 by 6, and it was in between a foot and 18 inches off the ground. It was on piers. Just a leveled area is what they did here. This is a rolling area, rocky, so it's difficult to level up. And they used a deck to do that. We think the fire started at the far end, likely embers getting blown and landing, hitting that wall, like Amanda showed in that photo. They hit the wall, gravity drops into the bottom of the wall, and they accumulate. We had a deck, and they accumulated. And debris starts the fire, these holes in the deck. So the surface, this is 2x4 lumber, or 2x6, and it's got some type of stain or something on it, but it burnt from underneath. If you looked underneath this, you would see these joists, these 4x6 joists, largely burnt. This was not a stable structure at this point. Behind me, well, I don't have a photo in this deck, but behind me, there's another area disconnected from this, but very similar construction. All that's left is ash and nails and screws. And we know there was a deck there because you can see where it was a similar piers and everything, and they leveled it up. But that's it. It was completely gone. So decks, big vulnerability, and needs some mitigation work. You know, the human nature, we gotta change people's behavior, and this is a very lucky situation. I mean, look at all of the stuff that is stored underneath this. It's all wood, and this house survived. But these are examples of things that, you know, we need to reinforce changing human behavior and living in an adaptive to wildfire. We know when these events are going to happen. We've got a warning. There's, you know, red flag days. I'm sure Canada has something similar, and so that we can tell people, hey, here are the days we need to make sure that we're being safe for the next 2 weeks, and mitigate these things in those situations. Go ahead, Amanda. There is, if you want to take down that URL, or you can use the QR code. There's an early insights report that our team has put out, and you're welcome to that. I'd like to point out also, if you just go to IBHS.org and click on the research tab, there's a wealth of public information that's a public research that you all would have access to. It spans everything from wildfires. There's a recent sprinkler study that's worth looking at, and just to point that something I meant to mention earlier, Wildfire Prepared is you'll notice all these things, they're passive. If you look through the standard, there are no active measures. These are passive things that are done to the house. They're structural, they're in place, they stay there, they're always ready to go. And so things like, we don't have things like sprinklers in the Wildfire Prepared program because there are areas that there's fail points. We have to have water, we have to have electricity. So Wildfire Prepared is a passive system of mitigations that stays in place with the structure. All right, Amanda, I'll turn it over to you on this.
All right. So, you know, the big message here is just it's the education piece, right? It's, you know, knowing what exactly, it's not just trimming your bushes back a little bit or doing, you know, a little bit of this or that. So we have worked with other nonprofit organizations like Habitat for Humanity, and they are actually building homes to our standard. We're also working with a couple different fire jurisdictions in California who have also now put it in their town ordinance to build to our standard. So, you know, those are a couple of ways, you know, just educating people on what the program is, what the mitigations are that matter, and then working with nonprofits. And so, you know, they were helping build homes there anyways, so why not build them stronger to begin with? And we do go a little bit above code in most areas, even IWUI code, you know, there's certain things like I mentioned the windows where we require 2 tempered panes of glass, or, you know, siding material. I think the Chapter 7A or IWUI code allows for, I believe it's synthetic wood or composite wood, as long as it has the sheathing, the non-combustible sheathing behind it. But we know we've done a little bit of additional testing, and it'll catch on fire from the outside and get into the eave. So we just go a little bit above code. So if you want to, you know, look at our materials, and, you know, just try to build better. That's, you know, that's what we're here for. We're a nonprofit. You know, we just want to make communities more resilient. And so that's it. I think I just wanted to put this up there one more time. It's an abbreviated list. We get into more details, and you can find that information on wildfireprepared.org. And again, it's a designation program. And so right now it's only available in California and Oregon, but you know, if they do if the homeowner or applicant does all of the things that that are required here, we give them a certificate and they can show it to their insurer that they've actually done the work to mitigate their house.
But it's all publicly available. It's not behind a paywall. You don't have to pay us to apply. You don't have to get the designation. You can do all these things and not get designated. So Canada, please take it, use it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, really valuable. We only have a couple of questions so far. I've got a long list of questions, but attendees, please chat your questions into the Q&A box. I'm going to relay them to our speakers. So our first question from Steve Reed. Could you list the jurisdictions you've worked with who have mandated building to these standards?
So right now, the town of Paradise is our very first one. We're working with 2 other counties that are in process. They're in process, but it's San Diego County and El Dorado. So all in California.
And could you remind us, California has had its California Building Code Chapter 7A since 2008, right after big California fire. That has a lot of what what goes into wildfire prepared. But you mentioned a few points where wildfire prepared exceeds the California Building Code Chapter 7A. Can you remind us what those are?
So
The
again,
biggest,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, the biggest one is really the windows, and so it only applies to the plus level of the designation. The WUI code requires 1 layer of tempered glass and doesn't specify if it's the inner or outer layer of glass. There's a lot of ongoing research on windows right now. We expect some of that to come out this year even, and we may be able to align more with the WUI code. It may be more, there's a lot of things that could come out of that. We know that the glass units fall out. So if we have the outer pane as the tempered glass and it just falls out on the ground, then it's just a single pane annealed window. So that's where we're coming from and saying, okay, until we figure this out, we need two panes of tempered glass until we find out what's going on. Hopefully we find out what's going on in the next year, and we can kind of clarify that. But that's the biggest difference. The mesh size, the 1/8 inch mesh, those items are all in there. The non-combustible, we require non-combustible and plus. We will designate, base doesn't have to have non-combustible, it just has to have 6-inch non-combustible at the base of the walls. And that's siding.
And what's the difference between? I mean, they're basically 2 big WUI codes in the United States. There's the International Code Council's International Wildland Urban Interface Code and the California Building Codes Chapter 7A. I'm not aware of, there may be others. Those are the only 2 that I'm aware of. Are there differences between those 2 that are notable here that you know about?
So there likely are. We have a gentleman called Malad that is our standards and code expert, and he is not on this call. So I can't elaborate on the differences between there because I would ask him.
Okay, all right. An anonymous attendee asks, how do you change human behavior to resist decorating around your home exterior with plants, trees, and so on? The Habitat home is well defended, but screams for personalization.
And that image is right when it was built and we did an event there. So what we tell homeowners, because we get it, and a lot of people can't visualize, oh, I'm going to put rocks all around my house and it's just going to look barren. So what we ask people to do is just plant those plants outside the 5-foot zone. So if you're standing at the street, you wouldn't even be able to tell that the plants are a little bit further out. It's letting your house breathe, being able to get to those vents or painting or, replacing windows or doing things on your house, pressure washing your house. So it's just letting your house breathe a little bit. Also, it actually helps if you are in a zone where termites might be an issue, bugs, things like that, that, your trees and bushes and things up against your house is also gonna, happen. So we just ask people, just move that vegetation just 5 feet out and don't make it huge bushes, huge bushes where, the flames will be taller. And then in a wildfire event, where it's windy, those flames will bend down and hit your house. So you want to plant lower vegetation, just outside that 5-foot zone. And you can make it really nice. You can make it really nice with stepping stones, different size rocks, so we're not asking to just, rip everything out and keep it down to, bare mineral soil, so, there is a way to make it look nice.
Yeah, there absolutely is. There are big neighborhoods in Colorado Springs that are all have that non-combustible apron, and they're pretty.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'll add, I've actually spoken to a few homeowners that are gardeners. I think of two of them that they actually put concrete walkways, like basically sidewalks, around their house, and they just all their landscaping was right outside of it, and they raved about it because now they can walk around and water their plants and see it without having to get behind it and between their house and the plant. There's benefits to it. Once it's established, it does look well. And like Amanda said, we're terrible at depth perception. The curb appeal is the same.
Awesome. Louis Blaise Dumais Levesque asks, do you have any partnerships with insurers?
So, we're a nonprofit, so we're actually supported by the insurance companies. But yes, there are insurance companies that are our members who have, stand behind it. And if you go to wildfireprepared.org, we've got them listed on our website. So we don't work directly with them for underwriting or pricing or who to write, who not to write. We're just a research company who can tell homeowners what to do, and that's what we do, and we designate them. So they're happy to share if they want to share that certificate with their insurance company and talk to them directly on, discounts or incentives. But yeah, so we do work with insurance companies.
Awesome. Robin Urquhart says, there isn't much mention of ignition or heat resistant frame requirements. I'm thinking specifically about vinyl deformation and glazing stops. Do you think it's a good idea to restrict frame materials? Window frames, I think.
So Mark mentioned that we are working with another partner just because we're in the throes of our research schedule goes 3 years out. So we are working with a partner to test windows specifically and get back to us with those results so that we're not all doing the same exact research. So those results will come out, and we will be talking to manufacturers. That's one of the things that we do. We do it for shingles. So we will be talking to manufacturers to, let them know they, may need to either, build it stronger. Maybe it's a thicker, maybe, instead of vinyl, it's metal. But yes, we will, once those results come out, it's definitely something we're going to look into for sure.
Awesome. And Robin clarified that the comment refers to windows and doors, so door frames as well.
Yes.
Let's see. Steve Levitt says, I've seen metal roofs that appear to have openings under flashing that accumulate debris and could be an opening to the interior. Do you have construction standards or awareness of this? Where I live, metal roofs are common.
So there's existing requirements on roofing, and in retrofit, some people throw a metal roof on top of old shingles and things like that. But if you follow the code, there are some requirements around that would mitigate that. All these roofs are typically their ratings are based on an assembly, and we can't determine the assembly when we're looking at a house. We have to put that on the homeowner to verify that they purchased and assembled roof correctly. It's got the warranty and everything. We're just looking for it to be a Class A roof and go from there.
And then we do require for barrel tiles and some metals that at the very edge where it comes off of the eaves, that those have bird stops. So they have non-combustible material at the end, so birds don't get in there and get debris in there. And then that's obviously where embers are going to get as well. So, I mean, if you walk around your house and you see anything that has a little, groove or entryway, you're going to want to, seal those up for sure.
Right. ICLR's Managing Director, Glenn McGillivray, asks, how are insurers reacting to wildfire prepared vis-a-vis discounts, availability, and so on?
So that's kind of the point, right? We, obviously if you mitigate, that's going to lower your risk. Insurance is based on risk. So again, we don't really get into pricing with our insurance companies or anything like that. It's up to them, how they, base their underwriting, if they will write, and any discounts that they deem, acceptable. I know that the California Department of Insurance has mandated specific discounts, but as for how much and all of that stuff, we don't get into that. We're the research company, so.
Gotcha.
And California's got their insurance issues right now, and the Fair Plan being the fastest growing insurance company in California right now. We have heard from homeowners in Paradise specifically that their houses, designated houses, they've told us that they were able to get off of the Fair Plan. So there are carriers writing these houses because of the designation. Whether there's a discount, I can't speak to that.
But availability is a big thing all by itself.
Yep. And it'll be cheaper than the Fair Plan. Any regular market insurance is much cheaper than the Fair Plan.
Thanks. Raymond Green asks, have you received any information that insurance companies are providing reduction in insurance costs if the homes are prepared? Which I think you've already answered. You're just not getting into that.
No.
Right.
There's filed rates on the CDI's website or the state rates, but we can't speak to those.
Okay. Let's see. Going back to an anonymous attendee who asks, is there a list of contractors we can rely upon to perform these updates? Do you keep a list of contractors who build wildfire prepared homes?
We don't keep a list. Oh, go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, we don't keep a list ourselves, but we do have a partnership with a company based out of California called Madronas. And so we have two options. The homeowner can kind of DIY these things themselves, or they can work with our full service company, Madronas, and they will come out and they will do a pre-inspection to tell the homeowner exactly what they need to do. And they have a list of contractors that they can use to actually do the work. So they have a list of those that they keep, that they know how to do it, and they're across the whole state of California right now.
Awesome.
And for the base level designation, you need a gardener, you need a handyman. Like almost every single house can be designated with a gardener and handyman for the base level. The plus level is either new construction or extensive remodel, typically.
Right. You have costs, range of costs for the retrofitting to plus?
Retrofitting to plus, no. Retrofitting to base can be done for, I would throw around 5,000 at it on average. It's going to be something like that. We're working on some numbers to look at that and get a closer number, but it's so variable. We're looking at California. You've got big cities, you've got rural areas, and it's an enormous state. So that number is going to be all over the place depending on the construction.
What about the marginal cost for new to go to plus?
It's actually it's very small. It's not we've got builders doing plus on new construction, and it is not impacting their bottom line.
Right, because if you choose the non-combustible siding to begin with, and you choose the right windows to begin with, it's not that much more of a cost. It's and when he says marginal, like a couple $1,000 difference. Because you're going to go ahead and put in the right vents, you're going to put in the right siding, you're going to put in the right windows. So it's not that much more of a cost.
Yeah.
And
it's really the windows.
And landscaping, right? Because people put all these bushes all around their house. If you put gravel and stepping stones and then just put a few things, on the outside, that's going to cut some costs too.
Well, the windows, that is a big deal. Availability of tempered glass. You can't just go to Home Depot and order, pre-manufactured frames that have tempered glass. At least you can't in Canada. I went searching for that a couple of years ago. Is availability any different in the United States where you can, order out of a catalog and get tempered glass?
Yes, it's availability is excellent. It's actually required tempered glass in various windows around the house. A lot of bathroom windows in wet areas are going to be tempered. Any window within 5 feet of a door is going to be tempered already. So most houses are going to have tempered windows intermixed with annealed glass. So we're just taking the rest of them to be full temper. They're not off the shelf. You're not going to find full temper on Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever shelf. You're going to order them. But it's, it's a readily availability.
Another one too, like for doors, I know somebody mentioned a question about doors. And so if somebody's got a full wood door or something like that, which we do accept, there's storm doors. So I live in the South, so a lot of people want to keep their front door open and let the sunlight in. So if you have that glass, they're dual paned tempered. So you can just install one of those on the outside instead of having to replace your whole entire door. So we try to keep costs in consideration when we created this product, but also, build with the right materials.
Gotcha. Another question from Steve Reed. He asks, have you tackled the issue of membranes under metal roofing, or have you just focused on the roof's external material? Class A roof needs a membrane, but I'm wondering if you're seeing any difference in the real world or in lab testing.
So that's part of the assembly I was talking about. It's going to be a product that is assembled. The metal roof is conductive. It may not necessarily be Class A in and of itself, but then you're going to have the assembly from the deck up. And we don't get into the assembly. That's the manufacturer that determines that. The end result is what we're looking for.
The Class A grade.
We've
Right.
done like the E108 test at our facility just on the roof cover, not necessarily on different assemblies underneath. We assemble them how, it's a typical construction. And we found that it does pretty well. The part that's a little bit more vulnerable is the edges. So, obviously if you get some debris in the valleys of the roof, as long as you keep your roof clean and things like that, where it's not going to accumulate with a lot of debris, it should be fine because they should roll off. But where's it going to roll off? It's going to roll off into your gutters. So for our plus level, we actually have you cover the gutters so that way all of the debris doesn't get in there, because then you have the fascia that's right there. And a lot of times they don't put flashing between the fascia and the gutters, so embers can get in between there. And we know once the fire starts near the fascia or near, where your gutters are. So the roof is very vulnerable in that sense. But once it gets into the attic, that's typically a total loss. And firefighters will move on to the next house if they're even there available for intervention. So you definitely, the maintenance is key with this program as well. And that's why we require the trees. And that could be another big expense. If you have the house in the forest and you've got trees everywhere, we require a little bit more spacing between trees in the 5 to 30 and then none in the 0 to 5. So, yeah.
And are you doing the limbing of the first 6 feet of the trees in the 0 to 30 or the 5 to 30?
Yes. Yes. So 6 feet up, 10 feet apart from the crowns.
Awesome. An anonymous attendee asks, is it possible to apply a paint or finish to make wood siding non-combustible or fire resistant, like the intumescent paint stuff?
So we have done a little bit of testing on this, not as much as we could, but we're more about the building materials themselves. The issue with paints, gels, those types of things is there's not any testing long term. So how often do you need to put it on? Do you need to put it on, 1 week before a fire happens? What happens after it ages? What happens after it's been exposed to snow or wind or sun? And how does that affect the longevity of it? How often do you have to do it? And nobody knows that question. We've reached out to even some of the companies and it's always a different answer. But so we do not accept any of that in our program whatsoever. Plus we can't evaluate for that. When did you paint it? Yesterday or a month ago, a year ago. So, yeah.
Sounds like another thing to plant in your roof garden outside. IBHS has a garden of roof shingles of various ages that they harvest periodically and bring in for laboratory testing. And your oldest roofs are looking like 15 years or more now.
So we are going to roll out our 10-year aged roofs, and we test all of our roofs against wind-driven rain, hail, and wildfire. So as they age, our 10-year results will be coming out later on this year. if
Cool.
not early 2026.
Awesome. So now you got to put out intumescent paint samples too now.
Exactly, exactly.
An
Great
anonymous,
questions, Joe. Great questions.
yeah. Let's see. Glenn McGillivray asks, any comments on the passive house that survived in the Palisades fire? That one that was in all over the news.
I was not able to go see that one in person, so I don't want to, I don't want to overstep there. It had good features. It had a non-combustible exterior. I'm aware of that, and it did appear to have some pretty good defensible space. I also saw the house. There was a lot cleared next to it, so it didn't have. One side did not have a structure, adjacent structure. I don't know if that, but that's all I can offer as far as that house.
The connective fuels, I know connective fuels is a huge part. So, I'm sure that played a role in it being clear next to it, but yeah.
Yeah, I visited the Eaton fire last week and looked at about 100 houses, and I was specifically looking for that zone 0 in each case, and also the zone 1, the 5 to 30 foot, because CAL FIRE is not recording that information in the DINS database, so I was looking for it specifically. And there was not a single house among the 100 that complied with either of those requirements. It was, I'm sure they were there somewhere, but it was a very small fraction of homes that had compliant defensible space.
Right.
Right.
An anonymous attendee asks, I have to repaint some outside railing. Are there any paints which are better than others or non-flammable? And I think you've sort of answered that.
Yeah,
We'll stick to the previous answer.
Okay. Let's see. Kevin Deneen asks, has there been any thought of designing radically different homes that are designed to withstand all major hazards, fires, floods, earthquakes, hail, etc.? I think we have the technology and the materials to do this, but it would mean a cultural change to the traditional look. Is IBHS considered a disaster-proof standard?
That's funny because we have talked about it, and we talk about, climate change and all of that. Floods, you have to build up. So, there's not a whole lot you can do to mitigate flood other than building higher. So that's a tough one. Wind, we've got a pretty good handle on wind and how to mitigate that with our fortified program, wildfire prepared home with those materials. We don't really study seismic. And I know, seismic bricks and stones and things like that can crack, and so anyways, I don't know. I think it's going to have to be based a little bit more on the area and what you're prone to getting, but yes, it has been a thought.
Cool. Noah Federley asks, do you have any comments about passive homes in general?
Passive homes being energy.
Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about.
We see a lot. Actually, I'm sure we have some that are designated. We see a lot of unvented attic spaces, and we don't have vents in the house, that kind of thing. So they can all be mitigated for wildfire. They can all be mitigated for wind. It's none of these mitigations would impact it being a passive house or not.
Yeah, I think that the story about that Palisades house was that it had been designed to be passive, and sort of by accident, those features helped to resist fire. Like there was only, there were very few air intakes, like one air intake. So that sort of avoids the need to have a whole bunch of mesh covered vents. Raymond Green asks, would fire-treated lumber for all the structural lumber and trusses not help if embers do make it into the structure?
So the issue with that, Amanda mentioned in the slide, 90% of houses that are damaged or have any impact from the wildfire complete loss. That comes from California's, their DINS inspections. In a conflagration event, there's just no one is gonna, you can't trust someone to come and defend your house. There's too much going on. There's not enough resources. This is beyond what can be planned for. And that's where that data comes from. So 90% of houses that have any damage or a complete loss in a wildfire for the last 20 years, roughly, of DINS data. And it wouldn't matter if it was those, we saw this whole neighborhood of houses that were steel studded construction, completely non-combustible framing, and they had complete loss. So I don't know that it would impact it. I don't believe it would.
Because of interior finishes, carpet and furniture and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, wildfires get up to 2,000 degrees. So, it's still going to burn, right? Wood, treated or not, There's also like certain types of wood, we've seen redwood, ipe, and that still burns. Less, it's fire resilient, but it will still burn in a wildfire event.
Gotcha. Let's see. An anonymous attendee asks, have you seen much research around flame-resistant coatings to timber and wood? But I think you've already answered that question. Another anonymous attendee, or maybe the same one, asks, are the fumes produced from a vinyl fence burning worse than those produced by a wood fence burning?
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
Yes, and actually, so at our test facility in Richburg, South Carolina, anytime we burn a big house and it's got cabinets, full bathtubs that have, the whole inserts, vinyl fences, we have to report to the EPA what material we're burning, how much of it. Yes. So yes.
And Keith, you said you were down there. And when we were down there, there was no smoke in the air, but you had to wear N95. I mean, the smells were still, everywhere. All those chemicals and stuff in the air.
Yep, absolutely. There was you could taste it. You could taste it
absolutely.
Let's see. Steve Levitt asks, are there any particular type of gutter covers that are required? I see plastic gutter covers on some homes. So are the gutter covers you're talking about aluminum or steel?
Non-combustible.
Combustible, yes.
Are there other, I assume it's aluminum or steel, or is there anything else?
That's it. Yeah. That's typically what they're made out of. And gutters, we have seen a few vinyl gutters are a little bit cheaper, but for the most part, a lot of people have the aluminum gutters. But I have seen the toppers that are plastic.
Yeah, we don't allow the plastic ones or the ones that go inside the gutter. We've seen a few people that have those that are like, I don't know, foam, I guess. None of those things would qualify.
Gotcha. Let's see. An anonymous attendee asks, do you have any tips for how we can work with levels of government or builders or finance or insurance to work together to change the building code in Canadian communities? I think I've got an answer for that if you don't.
I will turn to your answer.
Well, anonymous attendee, ICLR occasionally advocates for code change requests. And that means writing letters to the code writing authorities to support a code change request. Please pay attention when we write to you and ask you to write to support our code change request. We give you, the justification for the request. So that's what ICLR's response would be to that question. Let's see. Glenn McGillivray asks, would you say that the Class A roof issue is kind of solving itself? That is, do most new homes and re-roofed existing homes already have Class A?
In California, yes. That is not necessarily true everywhere. I don't know. I have no idea in Canada. California started requiring Class A roofing materials back Chapter 7A. So, we're well into Class A roofing, and but that's not necessarily the case in other states. There are still other levels of roofing that are sold. Asphalt shingles that are not Class A are still available in other areas.
Yeah, we saw a lot of cedar shingles in Jasper. There was not there was a lot of cedar roofing in the downtown area, and every burned commercial block had cedar roofs that ignited. So they're out there.
Very,
Let's see, an anonymous attendee says, fantastic information. So just kudos for the great presentation.
Thank you.
An anonymous attendee asks, how can the ember effect or firebrand effect reduce the effectiveness of wildfire mitigation requirements?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, anonymous attendee, I'm not sure I understand that question either. How can the ember effect or the firebrand effect, I think meaning the fact that so many fires, so many ignitions are caused by brands, how do they reduce the effect of wildfire mitigation requirements? So, given this stream of brands that come off of fires, how effective do you think I guess I would reinterpret the question to say, if you got the plus level of wildfire prepared, how much do you think your ignition probability is reduced relative to, a non-compliant house? In a fire, pick a fire.
I'll point out a couple things here, and maybe hopefully I'll answer the question in one of them. So the 1/8 inch mesh, the reason we say 1/8 inch doesn't mean that embers don't get through. Embers do get through the 1/8 inch mesh, and there was a video that showed that. The upside is at 1/8 inch, if an ember goes through, it doesn't carry the energy load that it carries is not enough to ignite materials on the inside of the structure. So we can't keep all embers out, but we know that what is the energy load that we would need to keep out, and that's where we get the 1/8 inch mesh. So that's one part of the structure itself. The embers, as far as and Amanda and I, we were kicking around how to explain this to homeowners the other day. Like, the fire front is not blowing over your house necessarily, and it is the embers are depositing next to your house and starting a spot fire, which then puts direct flame on your house. So that part of it is what we're trying to mitigate here. If we can reduce that, we can have a 5-foot non-combustible zone around your house. You may still have spot fires 6 feet away in that bush, but it's not direct flame contact to your house, to your wall system, under your eaves, and to your attic space.
right. And so the program is at a parcel level. So obviously the whole point is to try to get your house not to ignite. Now we got to get your neighbor to do it too, and your other neighbor to do it too. So once, this is our first take at, getting people to actually understand the science and do things on their own property that they can do. Then right now, part of our research, going out to these post events is to see how it affected the whole neighborhood. And, this house caught on fire first before this house caught on fire, and there was the connective fuels. So our next level is doing a neighborhood where we are going to start looking at neighborhoods and the fuel loads, the house, the number of housing density, so that we can figure out how to build stronger. Obviously, it's going to be a little easier in new construction where they wipe out all the trees and start from scratch rather than, retrofitting after everybody has been planting stuff to, have a privacy row of bushes from their neighbor, and getting people to, understand that that's not good. Be friends with your neighbor. I know sometimes easier said than done, but yeah, so that's our next goal, is to work on the neighborhood so that we can, that's going to further reduce your wildfire risk as a whole.
As a structural engineer, I try to quantify everything, right? And warned you, most of our audience, they don't want to see equations and whatnot. But you mentioned Chief Hawks a few times. He did some fabulous research on Paradise Fire. I think that was the first time he did this research, where he quantified the benefit of each of about a dozen features on Class A roof versus cedar roof, combustible raised deck versus no raised deck, et cetera, et cetera. And for each of these dozen features, he quantified the impact on ignition probability. Like cedar roof is 6 times as likely to, a house with a cedar roof has an odds ratio of 6 compared with the average house, meaning it's 6 times as likely to ignite. With the DINS database growing the way that it is, there's this huge wealth of quantitative information that can be sort of mined to quantify the benefit of all the features that you're talking about in how much they reduce ignition probability. I'd sure love to see some quantification of your base and your plus requirements relative to some sort of average in terms of how much does compliance reduce ignition probability? Do you have any of that? Has he done that? Have you done that math yet?
We're working on that. So we are modeling it, and based on a number of base homes and plus homes, and whether or not a neighborhood has a fuel break, and the density of trees, the density of the homes, how far apart are they, all of that. So we are doing modeling so that we can figure out exactly what the right mix is, right? Because nothing, no two neighborhoods are the same. No two houses are the same. So, people build, I need a shed, because I have too much stuff in my house, or, I want a wood porch, or I have a patio. I have a 1-level house instead of a 2-level house. I have, more vents in my attic and a crawl space. So there's different criteria. And so we are working on that.
Awesome. There's still a bunch of questions, but we are just about out of time. I want to give you a couple of minutes to give us any final thoughts. If we want to take away one thing from your talk, what do you think it ought to be? Amanda, you want to go first?
Sure. Again, I think, if there's one takeaway, it's the education people, spread the word. You saw it, you've seen the science. You're definitely welcome to use any of our materials. And so if there's one takeaway, it's that you have to do the whole system of actions, not just trim the bushes off the front of your house or the side of your house. It's all of the actions together. So that's the takeaway.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think Amanda's spot on. It's we saw so many examples of partial mitigation, and that doesn't always work out well. So, the full sample. Please use our information, share it, and if you have ideas or to how to steer people in the right direction towards mitigation and behavior changes, then please reach out and let me know.
Thanks very much. Great talk. I'm so looking forward to that, the results of that quantitative study about the efficacy of base and plus. I want to remind our attendees that we got another Friday forum about fire next month, 4 weeks from today, on March 14th, about firefighting water supply. That's where our friend Dr. Charles Scawthorne is going to tell us about the portable water supply systems and high pressure dedicated water supply systems that a few West Coast cities have that would prevent the kind of dry hydrant problems that we saw in the Palisades and the Eaton fires. So tune in, register for that talk next month if that sounds interesting. With that, I want to thank our speakers once again, Amanda West and Mark Vaughn from the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. Thank you so much for the work you do and for this great talk.
Thank you, Keith. Enjoyed it.
Thanks very much. Bye, everybody.